Good day and welcome to this Corporate Access with a spotlight on fintech. I'm Zanele Morrison. Despite infrastructural challenges, fintechs in Africa have grown rapidly over the years. The disruption due to COVID-19 introduced more possibilities for fintech entrepreneurs, but there's still a need for assistance and partnership with bigger corporates. Partnerships also allow big corporates to penetrate local markets and in doing so fill the financial gap in Africa. Joining me now from Dubai to discuss Africa's digital landscape and initiatives to boost the role of fintechs on the continent is Andrew Torre, Regional President for Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa at Visa. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. How has Visa's presence and investment in Africa contributed to its financial infrastructure and digital payment landscape?
Yeah, certainly. First of all, thanks for having me. We've been on the African continent for 50 years now. In fact, when we first expanded globally, Africa was one of the first places we came. And we've opened our office in Johannesburg, our first office in 1992. And so we've been on the ground for 50 years, investing and working throughout the community. We see amazing opportunities. We always have, but we see even more now. You were talking about fintechs and digital. So last year we made a pledge to invest $1 billion over the course of the next 5 years, and they're largely around three things. The first one is around scaling our operations. The second is around bringing in new innovation and new technology, and the third is really working across our ecosystem. We're a partnership business, and I'll give you some examples of each of those. The first around scaling our operations, we started with the one office in Johannesburg. We now have 10 offices across the continent. We operate in all 54 countries on the continent, and we're continuing to open new offices, and we're going to open an office in Dar es Salaam in the coming months. We also have continued to invest in our people on the ground. Over the last 2 years, we've increased our own workforce by 60%. We brought in specialists, technologists, data scientists. We also have programs for new grads and learnership programs to help uplift that next generation, and also work with them. And then on the technology side, we are a technology company. So we've opened an innovation studio last year in Nairobi to be able to work across the continent and bring our partners and clients in to co-create with them. We've also brought our latest and newest technology. So for example, we have a new acceptance solution called Visa Cloud Connect, which allows our partners to be able to not provide physical devices in order to accept payments from merchants, but literally put software on a small seller's phone. We've done that first in the world with FNB in Africa, and then we're doing other programs. For example, Visa Ready to Launch, where we make it super easy for fintechs and traditional partners, one-stop shop to be able to start issuing credentials. And then on the working across the ecosystem, this is at the heart of what we do. In order to be relevant in every market, we need to work across the ecosystem. We've got a program called She's Next, where we work with women entrepreneurs, critically important in the ecosystem. They tend to be not have as much access, not have as much financing. So we've done a number of country editions across where we bring in and mentor and sponsor and coach and provide financing to them. And we also work with governments across the ecosystem. You were talking about COVID. Disbursements have been critical during the pandemic. We provide solutions for the South African government to provide SASSA, or the social security disbursements. The Egyptian government, we're providing disbursements there around healthcare and other forms of subsidies. And we're working with the Kenyan government on the collection side to be able to start accepting digital payments. We've done it with the national parks, and we're going to be working in Kenya to be able to enable digital payments across the other government sectors.
You're dealing with such unique demographics across the continent in all the different countries, completely different trends moving towards this digital era. How are you pulling that together? How are you interpreting the landscape on the ground, what they need through your initiatives? And maybe that could be around the FinTech Accelerator program?
Absolutely. There's first of all, we've been on the ground in Africa, and we see the massive wave of digitization that's happening, which is going to bring both tremendous economic progress and societal progress. We are definitely leaning in and investing into that. If you look at the African continent, by 2050, there should be about 2.5 billion Africans on the continent. So there's a huge demographic trend that is definitely beneficial for the continent. You know, if I just take the Gen Zs right now, which are the 12 to 26-year-old cohort, they are the first natively digital population in the world. Everything's been on a phone, everything's been on an app. And Africa is certainly overrepresented in that dimension. And these consumers want easy, quick access. So, you know, be able to digitize and scale with a mobile phone and internet access is critical. And Africa's got about the largest population in the world. So, you know, we're working to support there. I will say that, you know, over the last couple of years, we've seen digitization already happening. We've seen cash as a percent of all consumer expenditure drop from 89% to 72% just in a couple of years. And when you think about this new young demographic that's coming in, they're going to further accelerate that. We believe the digital economy in Africa will be about $300 billion by 2025. You know, we're certainly very excited to work on that. You know, we've made great progress so far. Over the last 4 years, we've 4x'd or 4 times the number of sellers that accept our payments in Africa. It went from 1 million to 4 million. The number of active cards or credentials, as we often refer to them now as well, because they may be digital, has grown to over 140 million. E-commerce volume has tripled over the course of the last couple of years, and contactless, you know, the ability to tap a phone or a card has gone from almost being non-existent a few years ago to 50% of payments across Africa. That said, there's still lots of work to be done.
And, you know, Andrew, on top of that, you're focusing on financial inclusion. So you've mentioned a few on women, you've mentioned the youth, you know, but what are the other elements that these solutions promote on inclusion? But also, why is it important to move this unbanked economy into the tech financial platform systems?
Yeah, you know, ultimately, if you know, so I give a pretty rosy picture of growth and the young generation, but if you take a step back and you look at it, there are still 500 million Africans that are financially excluded. There are still about 44 million small sellers that are financially excluded, and there's a real cost to having them not being included. So we know that, and the reality is we're working really hard to reach them. One of the ways we can reach them is through technology and new players. So we're certainly working really hard on that. I mentioned She's Next. I'll give you an example of the power of that program. So we work with and fund women entrepreneurs. I had the good fortune of meeting one of the ones that we had funded a couple of years ago during the pandemic, women entrepreneur named Miriam, who works with a company called Neoli. And what she realized is there's a big opportunity for all the small artisans in Morocco to be able to sell their goods online, not just if you're walking around a marketplace in Marrakesh or Fez, but to reach the world. So we had funded her and worked with her. And then what actually happened was she then brought all of these small sellers onto her platform to be able to reach the 4.2 billion cards and consumers that we have across our network. And it really opened up a much wider market for them. I saw also then the skills transfer when I was there. We saw older women who had been practicing their crafts for many years starting to train a younger generation of women that wanted to do the same crafts. And by opening that access to the broader global market is really powerful. I'll give another example, you know, with a fintech and with the government. So I was in Cote d'Ivoire a couple of weeks ago. I met with the government and a fintech called Pinellas. And what they're doing is they've got Cote d'Ivoire has lots of cocoa farmers and coffee farmers and cashew farmers, which are a real staple and backbone of the economy. And they were having a challenge with, how do I make sure these small cocoa farmers get the right price for the goods they're selling? So we worked and created a digital ID, but also an ability to give them payment. So we've already now given that card to 1 million small farmers, cocoa farmers, and more coming. But it allows them to make sure they get the right price for their goods, and that's delivered digitally. So those are just some of the examples. When you work across the ecosystem, you can see these catalyst effects on communities by digitizing commerce and digitizing payments.
And what I see a lot, Andrew, is you've got a number of initiatives that are running that sort of span a number of countries. You've got the Visa Everywhere initiative. Have you been touching on that already in our conversation? Because it's one instrument that you're using to foster fintech innovation. How does it work? And what's been the impact of an initiative like that on the region?
Yeah, so I have not mentioned the Visa Everywhere initiative. I'll start with, we've got 4 major initiatives to support fintechs. 3 of them are global, one's unique to Africa. The first is the Visa Everywhere initiative, which is our global innovation platform to bring startups to be able to come in and innovate, and we provide them with prizes, support, and access. And over the course of the last 10 or so years since we've been doing it, we've had over 10,000 fintechs and startups that have come in and competed, and they've also been able to garner afterwards about $5 billion of investment. And we think we play a small role by being there to help them at the early stage and introduce them to the ecosystem. The next thing we have is our Visa Africa FinTech Accelerator program to really start to support smaller fintechs at an earlier stage in a much more hands-on way. We have something called Visa FinTech Fast Track to be able to, when a fintech is ready to launch, be able to easily come in and plug into our systems with our partners. And then the last one is something called Visa Partner Connect, where fintechs want to move from one market to another market to scale. So we work with them and enable them to work across geographies, to work across our ecosystem with partners that want to work with them. So those are the 4 fintech programs we've got.
Let's talk quickly about Nigeria. Interesting to hear that for a second year in a row, Nigerian startups have won the global finals, competing against finalists from the US, Europe, Latin America, even the Asia Pacific. How do you explain Nigeria's success?
It's tremendous. Although not surprising, I would say. I think there's a couple of things. There is certainly venture capital and private equity money coming in to support fintech growth. When I talk to you about the larger demographics, Africa makes sense, and Nigeria is an economic powerhouse and also a population center. So fintechs like to go in and start in one market where they can grow and get scale, and then they'll move to others. So Nigeria provides that real base to be able to kind of prove yourselves and then scale across other markets. So for our Visa Everywhere initiative, you're right. The last 2 years in a row, on the global level, not just on the African level or on this our Central Europe, Middle East, and Africa level, on the global level, 2 Nigerian fintechs have taken the crown. Last year, it was a company called Thrive Agric, which is really working with small shareholder farmers, which they know are the kind of backbone of communities. They provide them with data, they provide them with support, they'd be able to give them access to financing. So big transformational work happening with Thrive Agric. The fintech that won this year was Drugstock, similar in vein to really trying to solve complex societal problems. And their mission is really to be able to transform the pharmaceutical industry by being an effective supplier of pharmaceuticals that are safe and secure, because there are challenges with counterfeiting. So both of these fintechs are certainly emblematic of the growth and the aspirations of the continent, and we're just thrilled to be a part of their journey.
And it's a great place to play. The continent absolutely offers amazing opportunities for fintech growth. Andrew, thank you so much for spending time with us. That wraps today's Corporate Access. Thank you so much to my guest, Andrew Torre, Regional President for Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa at Visa. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.